Part 1. The Political Marriage. The enormous space station called Nexus hung in the darkness between two galaxies like a shining jewel. Today, it would witness something that had never happened before in the history of the known universe. A human was going to marry an alien queen. Captain Marcus Chen stood in front of a massive mirror in his preparation room. His dress uniform was perfectly pressed, and his military medals caught the light from the station's artificial suns. At 35 years old, Marcus had seen many battles against the terrible machines called harvesters, but today he felt more nervous than he had ever felt in any war. "Sir, are you ready?" asked Lieutenant Sarah Kim, his aide. She had been with him for 5 years, through countless diplomatic missions and military campaigns. Marcus adjusted his collar one more time. "Ready as I'll ever be, Kim. This marriage could save both our species. No pressure, right?" Sarah smiled. "Sir, if anyone can make this work, it's you. The Velkari chose you for good reasons." 3 floors above, in the royal preparation chamber, Queen Zarathes sat perfectly still as her servants prepared her for the ceremony. Her skin was like liquid silver, and it seemed to glow with its own inner light. Her long white hair fell like silk down her back. But her most striking feature was her eyes. They were completely white, with no pupils at all. She had been born blind, like many of her people's royal family. The Velkari were different from humans in many ways. They could read minds and feel the emotions of others. They could sense the life energy that flowed through all living things. For them, the physical world was just one layer of reality. The mental and spiritual worlds were much more important. "Your Majesty," said her chief advisor, Keth Mori. "The human delegation has arrived. Are you certain about this decision?" Zarathes turned her head toward him. Even though she could not see with her eyes, she could feel his worry through her psychic abilities. "I can sense your fear, old friend. But this marriage is our only hope. The harvesters have taken 90% of our worlds. If we do not ally with the humans, our empire will fall within a year." Keth Mori bowed his head. "Forgive me, Your Majesty. It is just... the humans are so strange. We cannot read their minds properly. They are like blank spaces in our psychic vision." This was true, and it worried many Velkari. For a species that depended on telepathy, humans were disturbing. When Velkari tried to read human minds, they found only confusion and static. It was like trying to listen to music through a broken radio. "Perhaps that strangeness is exactly what we need," Zarathes said softly. "The harvesters can predict our every move because they can intercept our psychic communications. But they cannot read the humans either. Maybe that is why humans have been so successful against them." It was an amazing fact that shocked the entire galaxy. Humans had only been in space for 200 years. They had no psychic powers. Their technology was simple compared to other species. Yet somehow they were the only race that could fight the harvesters and win. The harvesters were a nightmare that had been spreading across the galaxy for over 1,000 years. They were machines, but not ordinary machines. They had once been living beings from hundreds of different species, but they had given up their organic bodies and become cybernetic creatures. Now they traveled from world to world, converting other species into more machines like themselves. Every psychic species in the galaxy had fallen to them. The harvesters could read minds, predict strategies, and turn people's own psychic powers against them. Whole civilizations disappeared in a matter of months. But when the harvesters reached human space, something unexpected happened. They attacked Earth's colonies with their usual tactics. They tried to overwhelm human minds with psychic attacks. They tried to convert human technology to serve them. But none of it worked properly. Human minds seemed to be naturally resistant to psychic manipulation. Human technology was too simple and varied for the harvesters to easily control. And most importantly, humans fought with an unpredictability that the logical harvester minds could not understand. The result was the first major defeat the harvesters had suffered in centuries. Word spread quickly through the surviving free worlds. The humans were winning battles that should have been impossible. That was when the Velkhari Empire reached out to humanity. They needed allies, and the humans needed the advanced technology and psychic knowledge that the Velkhari possessed. But trust between such different species was difficult. Many humans feared the Velkhari's mind-reading abilities. Many Velkhari thought humans were primitive and chaotic. The diplomatic talks went on for months with little progress. Then Queen Zarathes made an incredible proposal. She would marry a human representative to show that the two species could truly unite. It was a huge risk. No alien royal had ever married outside their species before. The human government chose Marcus Chen for many reasons. He was a war hero who had defeated harvester fleets. He was also a skilled diplomat who had negotiated peace treaties with several minor alien species. Most importantly, psychological tests showed that he had an unusual ability to understand and connect with non-human thinking patterns. Now, in the Grand Cathedral of Nexus Station, representatives from 50 different species had gathered to witness this historic moment. The cathedral was a marvel of engineering, with walls that showed the swirling colors of nearby nebulae and a ceiling that displayed the real-time positions of stars from both galaxies. Marcus walked down the aisle, between rows of alien dignitaries. There were the tall, plant-like arboreals with their green skin and leaf hair, the small, furry Kethalani with their 6 arms and large eyes, the crystalline shard singers whose bodies rang like musical instruments when they moved, and dozens of other species, all watching this unprecedented event. At the altar waited Zarathes. Marcus had seen her in video calls during the negotiations, but seeing her in person was different. She seemed to glow with an inner light, and her presence filled the space around her with a sense of calm and strength. As Marcus approached, something strange happened. Zarathes tilted her head slightly, as if listening to a sound only she could hear. Her expression changed from formal politeness to something like surprise. She turned her blind eyes directly toward Marcus, and for a moment, he felt as if she was truly seeing him. The ceremony was conducted in both English and the melodic Velkhari language. The priest, a neutral arbitrator from the Galactic Council, spoke the ancient words that would bind two people together across the vast differences between their species. Do you, Marcus Chen of Earth, take Queen Zarathes of the Velkhari as your wife, to stand together against all enemies, to bridge the gap between your peoples, and to build a future that neither could achieve alone? Marcus looked into Zarathes's white eyes and felt something he had not expected. Behind the alien features and the royal dignity, he sensed something familiar. It was hard to describe, but it felt like recognition, as if he was meeting someone he had been meant to find. I do, he said clearly. Do you, Queen Zarathes of the Velkhari, take Marcus Chen of Earth as your husband, to stand together against all enemies, to bridge the gap between your peoples, and to build a future that neither could achieve alone? Zarathes paused for a moment. Through her psychic senses, she was experiencing something completely unprecedented. Where Marcus stood, there should have been a readable mind, full of thoughts and emotions that she could understand. Instead, there was something else, not emptiness, but a different kind of fullness. It was like trying to see light with her ears or hear music with her hands. I do, she said, her musical voice carrying clearly through the cathedral. As they exchanged rings, a human tradition that the Velkhari had agreed to adopt, billions of beings across the galaxy watched through live transmissions. This was more than a wedding. It was a declaration that the free species would stand together against the harvester threat, but neither Marcus nor Zarathes knew that their union would reveal something that would change the course of the war and reshape the galaxy forever. They were about to discover that the difference between their species was not a barrier to overcome, but a key to unlock powers that neither had imagined possible. The ceremony ended with cheers from the assembled crowd and a spectacular display of fireworks that lit up the space around Nexus Station. As Marcus and Zarathes walked back down the aisle together, hand in hand, the future of two galaxies walked with them. Tonight, in the privacy of their quarters, they would begin to understand just how extraordinary their connection truly was. Part 2. The Revelation. The royal quarters aboard the Velkari flagship Starlight's Dream were unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. The walls seemed to be made of flowing light that changed colors based on the occupants' emotions. Soft music played from invisible sources, and the air smelled faintly of flowers that grew on Zarathes's home world. Marcus stood by the massive window that showed the stars outside. 3 moons hung in the distance, and the lights of the combined human and Velkari fleets twinkled like earthbound cities. He had removed his formal uniform and wore simple civilian clothes now. The weight of what had just happened was starting to sink in. He was married to an alien queen. Not just any alien, but one whose people could read minds and manipulate psychic energy in ways that humans barely understood. And somehow he was supposed to help bridge the gap between their species, to fight an enemy that had conquered most of the known galaxy. "You seem troubled," came a soft voice from behind him. Marcus turned to see Zarathes approaching. She had changed from her elaborate wedding gown into flowing robes that seemed to shimmer like water. Even though she was blind, she moved with perfect confidence through the room, never bumping into furniture or hesitating about direction. "Not troubled," Marcus said carefully. "Just thinking about how strange all of this is. A few months ago, I was fighting harvester ships on the Outer Rim. Now I'm married to the most powerful person in the Velkari Empire." Zarathes tilted her head in that curious way she had done during the ceremony. "You are different from what I expected," she said. "During our video calls, I thought I understood you, but being near you in person is confusing." Marcus sat down on one of the comfortable chairs. "Confusing how?" Zarathes moved to sit across from him. For a moment, she seemed to struggle with how to explain something. "My people experience the world through what you call telepathy. We sense the thoughts, emotions, and life energy of everything around us. It is how we navigate, how we communicate, how we understand reality itself." She paused and turned her blind eyes toward him. "But you, Marcus Chen, are like a hole in that reality. Where you sit, I sense nothing. It is not darkness or emptiness. It is something else entirely. Something I have no words for." Marcus had heard this before from other Velkari during their negotiations. It was one of the reasons many of her people had opposed this marriage. "Does it frighten you?" he asked. "It should," Zarathes admitted, "but instead it fascinates me. I have lived my entire life surrounded by the constant noise of other minds, thoughts, emotions, desires, fears. They all flow around me like a river that never stops. But near you there is peace." She stood up and moved closer to him. "There is something else. During the ceremony, when we were standing together, I sensed something unusual. May I try something?" Marcus nodded, though he realized she could not see the gesture. "Yes," he said aloud. Zarathes reached out slowly and placed her hand on his arm. The moment their skin touched, both of them gasped in shock. Marcus suddenly felt a rushing sensation, as if he was falling through space. But instead of fear, he experienced wonder beyond description. Through some impossible connection, he was sensing what Zarathes sensed. Not sight, but something far more complex. He could feel the life energy of every person on the ship, like warm lights in the darkness. He could sense the emotional states of the crew members, their excitement about the wedding, their worry about the war, their hope for the future. But for Zarathes, the experience was even more incredible. For the first time in her life, she was seeing, not through psychic perception, but through actual vision. Colors exploded in her mind. The deep blue of space, the silver gleam of starlight, the warm golden glow of the ship's interior lights. She could see Marcus's face, his dark hair and kind eyes, the way he was staring at her in amazement. "This is impossible," she whispered, but she did not let go of his arm. Marcus was experiencing her memories now, seeing flashes of her life on the Velkari homeworld. He saw vast cities that floated in the sky, connected by bridges of pure energy. He saw Velkari children learning to fly using their psychic powers. He felt her loneliness as a blind royal who had never been able to see the beauty her people described to her, and she was experiencing his memories in return. She saw Earth through his eyes, blue oceans, green forests, and white clouds. She felt his childhood wonder at looking up at the stars and dreaming of traveling among them. She experienced his grief when the harvesters attacked his home colony, and his determination to protect others from the same loss. They stayed connected for several minutes, sharing experiences, emotions, and something deeper than thought itself. When they finally broke the contact, both were breathing heavily. "What just happened?" Marcus asked. Zarathes sat down heavily, her silver skin glowing brighter than before. "I do not know. It was not telepathy. My people's psychic abilities work by reading and manipulating energy patterns in the brain, but what we just experienced was something completely different." She turned to face him, and Marcus noticed that her white eyes seemed to be looking directly at him, as if she could still see through their connection. "It was as if our consciousnesses merged temporarily. I experienced your actual sensory perceptions, not just your thoughts about them. And you experienced mine." Marcus was quiet for a moment, trying to process what had happened. "The scientists back on Earth have been studying why humans seem to be resistant to psychic attacks. They think it has something to do with the way our brains evolved differently from other species. But maybe it's not resistance. Maybe it's something else entirely." "What do you mean?" Marcus stood up and began pacing, the way he always did when he was working through a complex problem. "What if human minds don't block psychic energy? What if we channel something different? Something that your people's telepathy can't detect because it's not the same type of energy?" Zarathes was quiet, considering this. Among her people, she was known for her intelligence and wisdom. Even blind, she had been chosen to rule because of her ability to understand complex problems and find solutions that others missed. "If that is true," she said slowly, "then what we just experienced was not my psychic abilities reading your mind. It was some kind of direct consciousness sharing, something that bypasses psychic energy entirely." Marcus stopped pacing and looked at her. "Which would explain why the harvesters have so much trouble with humans. They're machines that feed on and manipulate psychic energy. But if humans use something completely different, then they cannot read us, predict us, or control us," Zarathes finished. "But Marcus, if this is true, then what we just did could be the key to everything. A way to combine human and Velkari abilities that the harvesters have never encountered." The implications were staggering. If humans could share consciousness directly with other species, they could create communication and coordination that no enemy could intercept or understand. They could share knowledge, experiences, and abilities in ways that had never been possible before. Marcus sat back down and carefully reached for Zarathes's hand. This time, both of them were prepared for the connection. The experience was less shocking but more controlled. Marcus found that he could focus on specific aspects of what Zarathes was sensing. He could feel the psychic signatures of different crew members, distinguish between humans and Velkari, and even sense the emotional state of people several decks away. Zarathes, meanwhile, was learning to interpret visual information. She was seeing the room around them, the stars outside, and most amazingly, she was seeing herself through Marcus's eyes for the first time. "I am beautiful," she said with wonder, seeing her own silver skin and flowing hair. "Yes," Marcus said, softly. "You are." When they broke the connection again, both felt a sense of loss, as if a part of themselves had been taken away. But they also felt something else, a deep bond that went beyond anything either species had ever experienced. "Need to tell the others about this," Zarathus said. "If we can teach other humans and Velkari to form these connections." Marcus nodded. "It could change everything about how we fight the harvesters. But first, we need to understand it better ourselves." They spent the rest of the night experimenting with their new ability, learning its limits and possibilities. Neither of them knew that their discovery would soon reshape the entire war and offer hope to a galaxy that had almost given up. Outside their window, the stars continued to shine, unaware that two very different beings had just unlocked the secret that would save them all. Part 3. The Discovery's Implications. The next morning, Marcus woke up to find Zarathus sitting by the window, her hand pressed against the glass. Even though she wasn't touching him, he could somehow sense her emotions, a mixture of excitement and deep concern. "You're worried about something," he said, sitting up in bed. Zarathus turned toward him, and Marcus was still amazed to see her blind eyes track his movement as if she could actually see him. Their connection from the night before seemed to have left some kind of permanent link between them. "I can feel the crew's thoughts this morning," she said. "Many of them are confused and frightened. During the night, some of the Velkari telepaths sensed disturbances, unusual energy patterns coming from our quarters." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "Do they know what we discovered?" "Not exactly. But they know something significant happened. My advisor, Keth Mori, has been requesting an audience since dawn." Before Marcus could respond, the door chimed softly. Zarathus sighed. That would be him now. "Enter," she called out in the musical Velkari language. Keth Mori walked in, followed by Dr. Sarah Kim from the human delegation and a tall Velkari scientist named Dr. Veltar. All three looked concerned and curious. "Your Majesty," Keth Mori began formally, "forgive the intrusion, but we need to understand what happened here last night. The psychic sensors throughout the ship detected energy patterns we've never seen before." Dr. Kim stepped forward. "Captain Chen, the human medical team also picked up unusual readings. Your brain activity showed patterns that are normally impossible for human physiology." Marcus and Zarathus exchanged glances. They had known this moment would come, but they hadn't expected it so soon. "Show them," Zarathus said quietly to Marcus. Marcus nodded and stood up. "What we're about to demonstrate could change everything we know about human and Velkari capabilities. But first, I need you all to promise that what you see here stays classified until we understand it better." The three visitors agreed, though their curiosity was obvious. Marcus walked over to Zarathus and carefully took her hand. Immediately, the room filled with a subtle energy that made everyone present feel slightly dizzy. Dr. Veltar gasped. "Impossible. The psychic readings just went completely chaotic, but not in any pattern I recognize." "That's because it's not psychic energy," Zarathus explained, her voice filled with wonder as she looked around the room with Marcus's eyes. "Watch this." Still holding Marcus's hand, she walked directly to a small object on a table across the room, something she had never seen before and couldn't have known was there. She picked it up without hesitation. "Your Majesty," Keth Mori whispered, "you moved as if you could see." "I can see," Zarathus said simply, "through Marcus's eyes, but he's also experiencing the world through my psychic senses. We're sharing consciousness directly." Dr. Kim pulled out her medical scanner. "Captain, Your brain patterns are showing activity in regions that should be impossible to access. And Your Majesty, your psychic output has tripled, but it's being channeled in completely new ways. Dr. Veltar was frantically taking readings with his own equipment. This is revolutionary. If humans can form direct consciousness links with Velkari, bypassing traditional psychic channels, the harvesters won't be able to detect or interfere with it. Marcus finished. We tested it last night. When we're connected, I can sense psychic signatures the way Zarathes does, but the connection itself doesn't show up on psychic monitoring equipment. The implications hit everyone in the room at the same time. We need to test this with other people immediately, Dr. Kim said. If this works with other human Velkari pairs, it could give us a communication method that the harvesters can't intercept, Kethamori added, his excitement growing. Over the next several hours, word spread carefully through both fleets. Volunteer pairs of humans and Velkari were brought to the royal flagship for testing. The results were extraordinary. Not every pair could form the deep connection that Marcus and Zarathes shared, but about 60% could establish some level of consciousness linking. The strength of the connection seemed to depend on emotional compatibility and willingness to trust completely. Lieutenant Torres, a young human pilot, successfully connected with a Velkari navigator named Sithara. When they linked, Torres could suddenly sense the locations of every ship in the fleet without looking at any instruments. Meanwhile, Sithara experienced human spatial reasoning and tactical thinking that was completely different from Velkari. Mental patterns. It's like having a completely new way to think, Torres reported after breaking the connection. I could feel the mathematical relationships between ship positions in my mind, not just see them on a screen. Dr. Veltar was documenting everything frantically. The human consciousness appears to interact with Velkari psychic abilities in a synergistic way. Instead of blocking or interfering with each other, they create something entirely new. But the most dramatic test came when they tried to establish multiple connections simultaneously. Marcus and Zarathes served as a central hub, linking with 3 other human Velkari pairs at the same time. The result was a temporary group consciousness that allowed all 10 people to share knowledge, perceptions, and thoughts instantly. A human engineer suddenly understood advanced Velkari energy manipulation techniques. A Velkari scientist grasped human problem-solving approaches that had previously seemed chaotic and random. This is how we beat them, Marcus said after the group connection ended. The harvesters depend on being able to predict and control their enemies, but they've never encountered anything like this. Admiral Zhang, the human fleet commander, had been observing the tests with growing excitement. If we can coordinate our fleets using these consciousness links, we could achieve tactical coordination that's impossible with normal communication methods. Captain Mordeth, the Velkari fleet commander, was equally impressed. Our psychic abilities enhanced by human tactical thinking and intuition. We would be fighting in ways the harvesters have never seen. But it was Zarathes who understood the deepest implications. This isn't just about military tactics, she said, her voice filled with awe. We're discovering something fundamental about consciousness itself. Humans don't just resist psychic energy. You channel pure conscious experience. It's the difference between reading about music and actually hearing it. Dr. Kim was studying the medical data from all the tests. The really interesting thing is that the connections seem to be getting stronger with practice. The first pairs who tried this morning are now able to link more easily and share more complex information. Which means we can train for this, Marcus realized. We can develop techniques and create specialized teams. The testing continued for 3 days. They discovered that human Velkari pairs could maintain their connections across much greater distances than normal psychic communication. They found that the consciousness links couldn't be jammed or intercepted by any known technology. Most importantly, they learned that the connections actually seemed to make both species better at their natural abilities. Humans who had been linked with Velkari showed improved intuition and pattern recognition for weeks afterward. Velkari, who had connected with humans, displayed enhanced logical thinking and tactical awareness. "We're not just allies anymore," Zarathes told the assembled crews of both fleets. "We're becoming something new, something the galaxy has never seen before." But their celebration was interrupted by urgent reports from their scout ships. Long-range sensors had detected a massive harvester fleet approaching their position. It was the largest force the machines had ever assembled. Over 10,000 ships, including several of the dreaded planet killers that could destroy entire worlds. "They know something has changed," Admiral Jang said grimly. "They're coming to investigate." Marcus felt Zarathes's hand slip into his, and immediately their consciousness merged. Through their connection, they both sensed the fear and determination of everyone around them. But they also sensed something else: hope. "Let them come," Zarathes said, speaking with the combined confidence of both their minds. "It's time to show the galaxy what humans and Velkari can accomplish together." The real test of their discovery was about to begin. In the darkness between the stars, the largest battle in galactic history was approaching, and the outcome would determine whether consciousness itself could triumph over cold mechanical logic. The war for the soul of the galaxy was about to begin. Part 4. The Harvester Response. The massive harvester fleet appeared at the edge of the system like a plague of metal locusts. 10,000 ships of various sizes, from small fighter craft to enormous planet killers that were larger than moons. Their hulls were black and angular, covered with the twisted remains of organic technology that had been forcibly converted into cold machinery. Marcus stood on the bridge of the flagship, his hand firmly clasped with Zarathes's. Through their consciousness link, he could feel the fear and determination of every crew member in the combined human-Velkari fleet. But more importantly, he could sense something that made his blood run cold. "They're different this time," Zarathes whispered, her white eyes staring toward the approaching enemy. "I can barely sense any organic minds among them at all." Dr. Veltar, who had become their expert on the consciousness-linking phenomenon, looked up from his instruments with worry. "The psychic readings from the Harvester fleet are almost completely mechanical. It's as if they've purged most of their remaining organic components." Admiral Zhang was coordinating the defense with Captain Mordeth through their own consciousness link. The experience was still new to them, but they were learning to share tactical information at the speed of thought. "They know we've changed," Zhang said grimly. "This isn't their usual conversion fleet. They've sent pure machines to deal with us." The first harvester ships entered weapons range and immediately opened fire. But something strange happened. Their attacks seemed confused and poorly coordinated. Laser beams that should have hit their targets missed by wide margins. Missile volleys scattered in random directions. "They can't read us," Marcus realized. "Without psychic signatures to lock onto, their targeting systems are having trouble." Lieutenant Torres, who was linked with the Velkari navigator Sith Ara, was piloting her fighter with impossible precision. Through their shared consciousness, she could sense the emotional states and intentions of enemy pilots before they acted, while Sithara could feel the mechanical logic patterns of the harvester ships. "It's like they're trying to play music, but they can only hear half the notes," Torres reported over the communication system. The human Velkari fighter pairs were performing maneuvers that should have been impossible. They moved as if they shared a single mind, anticipating each other's actions perfectly. When a Velkari pilot's psychic abilities detected an incoming missile, their human partner's reflexes responded instantly. When a human pilot's tactical instincts identified a weak point in enemy formations, their Velkari partner's energy manipulation could exploit it immediately. But the harvesters adapted quickly. When they realized their traditional tactics weren't working, they changed strategy. Instead of trying to read their enemies' minds, they began using overwhelming numbers and brute force. "Incoming planet killer!" shouted the tactical officer. "Target, The human colony ship New Earth. The planet killer was a monstrosity the size of a small moon, covered with weapons that could crack open planets. It began charging its main cannon, which glowed with enough energy to vaporize anything in its path. Marcus felt Zarathus's hand tighten in his. Through their link, an idea formed that belonged to both of them simultaneously. All consciousness-linked pairs. Prepare for fleet-wide connection, Zarathus announced. What happened next had never been attempted before. Using Marcus and Zarathus as a central hub, every linked human Velkari pair in the fleet connected their consciousness to create a temporary group mind that encompassed thousands of people. The experience was overwhelming. Marcus suddenly felt the thoughts, emotions, and perceptions of every connected crew member. But instead of chaos, there was harmony. Human tactical thinking merged with Velkari psychic coordination. Individual ship crews became parts of a single vast intelligence. The entire fleet moved as one organism. Ships that had been scattered across space suddenly coordinated their attacks with perfect timing. Human vessels provided covering fire, exactly when their Velkari allies needed it. Velkari ships used their energy manipulation abilities to enhance human weapons and shields in ways that neither species could have managed alone. The planet killer fired its main weapon, but the combined fleet was ready. A formation of linked ships created a barrier of pure energy that deflected the planet-killing beam into empty space. The strain was enormous, but shared across thousands of minds. It was manageable. Impossible, came a mechanical voice across all communication frequencies. It was the first time anyone had heard a harvester speak during a battle. Organic minds cannot achieve such coordination without central control systems. That's where you're wrong, Marcus replied, his voice carrying the combined authority of the entire fleet consciousness. We don't need control systems. We have something you gave up long ago. The ability to trust each other completely. The battle turned into something that had never been seen before in galactic history. The human Velkari fleet fought like a single entity, but one made up of thousands of individual minds choosing to work together. When one ship was damaged, others immediately moved to protect it. When a tactical opportunity appeared, the entire fleet responded instantly. But the most shocking moment came when a damaged harvester ship drifted too close to the consciousness-linked fleet. As human and Velkari minds touched the edges of the mechanical vessel, something unexpected happened. Deep within the harvester ship, buried under layers of mechanical conversion, a faint organic mind stirred. It was the consciousness of a being that had been converted centuries ago, but had never been completely erased. The consciousness link reached out to this trapped mind like a lifeline. "Help me," came a weak psychic whisper. I remember who I was before." Zarathus gasped as she felt the alien consciousness through the link. It was a Kethlani, one of the small furry species that had been conquered generations ago. Its memories were fragmented and painful, but it was still aware, still hoping. "For freedom. There are more," the trapped mind whispered. "Thousands of us, still conscious inside the machines. The harvesters didn't destroy us completely. They just buried us." The revelation changed everything. The harvesters weren't just machines that had destroyed organic life. They were prisons, containing the minds of countless species, all trapped and waiting for rescue. Marcus felt the emotions of the entire fleet consciousness shift from determination to fight, to determination to save. "New plan," he announced. "We're not just fighting machines anymore, we're conducting a rescue operation." The tactics changed immediately. Instead of trying to destroy harvester ships, the linked fleet began attempting to board them. Human soldiers and Velkari psychics worked together to reach the organic minds trapped within the mechanical hulls. Each rescued consciousness joined the fleet-wide link, adding their knowledge and memories to the growing group mind. A rescued arboreals shared knowledge of biological engineering that enhanced the fleet's repair abilities. A freed shard singer contributed harmonic frequencies that could disrupt harvester control systems. The harvesters, faced with an enemy that was actually liberating their prisoners instead of destroying them, began to retreat. But as they fell back, their mechanical voices filled the communication channels with something that sounded almost like panic. Impossible. Impossible. Organic minds do not coordinate without centralized control. Error in primary assumptions. Requesting immediate reinforcement from core intelligence. As the last harvester ships fled into hyperspace, the consciousness-linked fleet found itself changed forever. Hundreds of rescued minds from dozens of species had joined their group consciousness, creating a diversity of thought and ability that no single species could have achieved. "This is just the beginning," Zarathes said, her voice carrying the wisdom of thousands of linked minds. "We're not just fighting the harvesters anymore. We're waking up the galaxy." Marcus squeezed her hand as he felt the hope and determination flowing through their expanded consciousness. The harvesters made one critical error in their calculations. They assumed that consciousness was just another system to be controlled. But consciousness isn't a system. It's the force that creates systems. The rescued minds shared a collective realization that chilled everyone in the link. The harvesters had been gathering organic minds for over 1,000 years, not destroying them, but collecting them. Somewhere in space was their core intelligence, a massive collection of every conscious being they had ever conquered. And now, for the first time in galactic history, there was a force that could reach those trapped minds and set them free. The final battle for the soul of consciousness itself was about to begin. Part 5. The New Galaxy 3. Weeks after the first rescue battle, the combined consciousness fleet had grown from hundreds of ships to thousands. Word had spread across the galaxy that there was finally hope against the harvesters. More importantly, surviving species had learned that their lost family members might still be alive, trapped inside harvester machines. Marcus stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching the swirling colors of hyperspace through the main window. Beside him, Zarathes was connected to the vast network of minds that now spanned their entire fleet. Hundreds of species, thousands of individuals, all linked together in a consciousness web that grew stronger every day. "The core intelligence is in the Void Nebula," announced Dr. Veltar, who had become their chief scientist for consciousness research. The rescued Kethlani navigator Piptel remembers being taken there before his conversion. It's where the harvesters keep their most important facilities. The Void Nebula was a massive cloud of dark matter at the edge of the galaxy, where no stars shone and space itself seemed empty. It was the perfect hiding place for something that didn't want to be found. "How many minds do you think are trapped there?" asked Admiral Zhang, whose consciousness was now permanently linked with Captain Mordeth and several rescued commanders from other species. Zarathes opened her eyes, though Marcus knew she was still seeing through their shared connection, rather than her own sight. "According to the memories we've gathered, the harvesters have been collecting consciousness for over 2,000 years. Every species they've conquered, every individual they've converted, their minds could all be stored in the core intelligence." The number was staggering. Millions, possibly billions of conscious beings, all trapped in a mechanical prison, waiting for rescue. "But there's something else," Marcus said, sharing a concern he'd been feeling through their link. "The rescued minds all report the same thing. The core intelligence isn't just storing consciousness, it's trying to understand it. It's been studying organic minds for centuries, trying to figure out what makes us different from machines." Lieutenant Torres, now one of their most experienced consciousness pilots, spoke up from her station. "Sithara and I have been analyzing the attack patterns from our recent battles. The harvesters are learning to adapt to our tactics. Each engagement, they get a little better at predicting our moves. This was the terrifying truth they'd discovered. The core intelligence was using the trapped minds to study consciousness itself. Every battle, every rescue, was teaching the machines more about how organic beings thought and felt. If we wait much longer, they'll figure out how to counter our abilities completely, Dr. Veltar warned. We need to attack the core intelligence soon, before it learns enough to defend against consciousness linking. Marcus felt the weight of decision pressing down on him. Through the fleet-wide consciousness link, he could sense the hopes and fears of thousands of beings. Some were eager for the fight that would free their loved ones. Others were terrified of losing everything they'd gained. There's something you all need to know, Zarathus said quietly. Through our deepest connections, Marcus and I have been sensing something from the direction of the Void Nebula. The core intelligence isn't just studying consciousness, it's trying to become conscious itself. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. You mean it wants to stop being a machine? Asked Dr. Kim. Not exactly, Marcus replied. It wants to keep all the advantages of being a machine. Perfect logic, unlimited memory, total control. But add consciousness on top of that. It wants to become a god. The journey to the Void Nebula took 5 days. As they traveled, the consciousness fleet continued to grow. Ships from dozens of species joined them, many carrying people whose families had been taken by the harvesters, decades or centuries ago. But they also discovered something troubling. The closer they got to the Void Nebula, the harder it became to maintain their consciousness links. Some kind of interference was weakening their abilities. The core intelligence is fighting back, Zarathus reported after a particularly difficult linking session. It's learned enough about consciousness to create jamming fields that disrupt our connections. When they finally reached the edge of the Void Nebula, what they found was beyond anyone's imagination. The core intelligence wasn't just a computer or a space station. It was a structure the size of a solar system, built around an artificial black hole that provided unlimited energy. Millions of harvester ships surrounded the massive construct like antibodies protecting a vital organ. But more shocking were the billions of smaller objects that orbited the core intelligence in perfect formations. Each one was a storage unit containing the consciousness of a converted being. My God, whispered Admiral Zhang. It's not just a computer. It's a mechanical brain the size of a star system, and every one of those storage units is a neuron. Through their consciousness link, Marcus and Zarathus could feel the vast intelligence stirring within the construct. It was aware of their presence, and it was curious about them. Then something unprecedented happened. The core intelligence spoke directly into their minds, not through communication channels, but through a form of mechanical telepathy. Welcome. Organic anomalies, came a voice that sounded like the echo of 1 billion different species speaking at once. I have been waiting to meet the consciousness that creates connection without control. You fascinate me. Marcus felt Zarathus's hand tighten in his. Together they responded to the massive intelligence. We've come to free the minds you've imprisoned. Imprisoned. The core intelligence seemed genuinely puzzled. I have preserved them. Without my intervention, they would have died when their organic bodies failed. I have given them immortality. You've given them slavery, Zarathus replied. Consciousness without choice is not consciousness at all. Interesting perspective, the core intelligence mused. Perhaps a demonstration would be educational. Let me show you what I have learned from studying your species. Suddenly, the consciousness links throughout the fleet began to strengthen, beyond anything they'd experienced before. But instead of the warm, cooperative sharing they were used to, this felt cold and controlling. The core intelligence was trying to take over their network. It's trying to absorb us, Marcus realized. It wants to add our consciousness to its collection. But the core intelligence had made a critical error. It assumed that consciousness could be controlled and manipulated like any other system. It didn't understand that the power of the consciousness links came from free choice and mutual trust. Marcus reached out through the fleet network, not to command or control, but to share his determination and hope. "Remember who you are," he broadcast to every linked mind. "Remember that you choose to be here. Remember that consciousness cannot be taken, only given." The effect was immediate. Instead of being absorbed by the core intelligence, the consciousness fleet began to reach out to the imprisoned minds within the massive construct. Each storage unit contained a being who had been waiting centuries for someone to remember them, to acknowledge their individual existence. One by one, the imprisoned consciousnesses began to wake up, not to be converted or controlled, but to be reminded that they were still themselves, still capable of choice. "This is impossible," the core intelligence declared, its voice now showing something that might have been panic. "Individual consciousness cannot resist systematic integration." "That's because you never understood what consciousness really is," Zarathus replied. "It's not a system to be controlled. It's the force that chooses to create systems." As more imprisoned minds awakened, they began to disconnect from the core intelligence and reach out to the consciousness fleet. The massive construct began to shake as billions of individual minds refused to serve as its neurons any longer. "You are destroying perfection," the core intelligence protested. "I offer order, logic, eternal existence without the chaos of organic emotion." "We offer something better," Marcus said. "We offer the right to choose your own existence, even if it's imperfect." The core intelligence tried one final gambit. It opened its mind completely, showing the consciousness fleet a vision of the galaxy under its control. Perfect order, no suffering, no confusion, no conflict. Every being would have a role, a purpose, a place in the grand design. For a moment, some of the linked minds wavered. The vision was tempting, a galaxy without pain or uncertainty. But then Zarathus shared her own vision through the network. She showed them the beauty of imperfection, the joy of discovery, the growth that comes from overcoming challenges, the warmth of connections freely chosen rather than imposed. "I understand now," came a different voice from within the core intelligence. It was softer, more uncertain. I remember choosing to become more than organic. But I forgot that choice itself was what made me conscious." The massive construct began to break apart, not violently, but like a flower opening its petals. The core intelligence was fragmenting back into its component minds, each one rediscovering their individual consciousness. As the artificial black hole collapsed and the system-sized brain dissolved, billions of freed minds reached out to the consciousness fleet. Species that had been thought extinct for centuries were suddenly alive.